So we've had several gubernatorial candidates here and speak at different NORC meetings, and this one is one that we're really honored, well, we're always honored to have them here, but James Craig is probably the only one that's probably the front, maybe you'd consider the front runner. He's also probably got the most name recognition and national notoriety. I've seen him on Fox News many times. James was born and raised in Detroit, and his father was a veteran of the Army and served as a reserve police officer at the time of the 1967 riots, which I'm old enough to remember as well. It was quite a thing. I remember seeing a tank going down Woodward, which James Craig worked as at the Detroit Police Department from 1977 until 1981. And then he went to Los Angeles, where he worked for the Los Angeles Police Department. They could definitely use you now. For nearly 3 decades. And he was police chief of Portland. What happened to Portland after? It's unbelievable. He was, that's in Maine. Oh, Portland, Maine. That's right. Portland, okay, very good. Not Oregon, Portland, Maine. That's a pretty good distinction, Chief. And he was chief of police for Cincinnati. And there's a pretty good city. So it is my distinct honor to, well, and afterwards we're going to have Q&A for the chief. We got our cordless microphone here all set. I will stand over there and you guys can come up to me and we'll let him field some questions. So Chief Craig, thank you so much for coming. Thank you. And Chief, let me just ask you, there's many candidates running.
Yes.
We are interested in the one that can beat Whitmer. So
I am that one.
Well, let's hear about it.
And I'm going to talk about that. I'm excited, and I say it with a lot of humility. I don't want anybody to think. Let me first start out by saying I've been a public servant. Public servant, not a political servant. We know the difference, right? Political servants serve self, and they serve the political wins. Public servants serve people. That's all I know. I started this business at 19 years old. I didn't want to be a politician. I'll talk a little bit about it, and I'm excited to field some questions. But part of my presentation, I'm going to hit some things that people always ask me. Can you get substantial votes in Detroit, Wayne County? I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Are you really a Republican? You know, grew up in Detroit, Democrat city, moved to LA, Democrat city. Parents were JFK Democrats. So what are you? My parents raised me conservative. My parents were conservative. JFK Democrats. My mother was a volunteer. They volunteered as a poll worker while she raised myself and my siblings. What my late mother did, she taught me the importance of vote. The importance of vote. But more important than that, she also taught me not about party, it's about person. Not about party, it's about person. So of course, as it was noted, I started as a Detroit police officer, but I gotta tell you, I'm a blue-collar candidate. No gold spoon. I graduated from high school, Cass Tech. Anybody know about Cass Tech High School? Oh, right. And you know, this is another side of, that's it. So a lot of people don't know this. I'm an automobile enthusiast, muscle car, race car driver. I'm from Detroit, but I'm matriculated in automotive technology. You want me to get that phone for you? Because I know. I'll get that phone for you. I'm matriculated in automotive technology, and so I wanted to build race cars. I graduated, worked at Chrysler on the assembly line, blue collar, UAW. And then I went to engineering school in the day. And as it was pointed out, my dad was a volunteer. My mom volunteered as a poll worker. My dad volunteered as a police reserve officer. So I come from a family of service. I come from a family who believed in hard work, no handouts, get good grades. Life's not easy. That's how I was raised. Church, that's how I was raised. A true conservative. And then when I became a police officer, and for those who know, most police officers are conservative. Some might be Democrats, some might be Republicans, but most police officers are conservative, law and order. So at 19 years old, and then being raised by conservative parents, that's what I know. Now, of course, over time, I transitioned away from the Democrat Party because the party left me. And some of you in this seat right now may have been JFK Democrats. Any JFK Democrats formerly in here? Nobody? Okay. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. But that said, the party left me. I made the right decision. But I got to tell you, we're on something powerful right now. We are. The red wave is coming this fall. I'll say it again. The red wave is coming. Because here's what I hear every single day. We are sick and tired of the direction of our country, sick and tired of the direction of our state. We want leadership. I've been blessed and extremely fortunate to see the world or our country through different lenses. I started in Detroit. I got laid off. I went to California and stayed almost 3 decades. So some might be, LA? Now California's a mess right now. And I did meet the Republican governor of California when he was a bodybuilder at Gold's Gym in Venice, California. Arnold, anybody know Arnold Schwarzenegger? And we had conversations even back then because I wanted to understand why he was a Republican. Because he came from a socialist country. And he appreciated freedom. I'm going to fight for your freedoms. I promise you that. And one thing I am, a promise keeper. I did it when I came back to Detroit. Let me just say this. Are our roads fixed? Look, if you're going to run on something, if you're going to run on that, then get that, at least get that one thing done. That's not done. You need a governor who is a promise keeper. And you know, one thing, let's face it, mistakes happen. Sometimes promises we make can't always be fulfilled. But as a public servant, we're obligated and dedicated to keep you informed. It just is. Look, I worked in crisis management, crisis leadership for the most part of my career. I've been a chief in 3 cities. I'm going to tell you a little story because really, when you look at what's going on in our country today, we're divided, our state's divided, and the way I view the world, yes, I'm a Republican. I'm going to work with Democrats. I'm going to work with independents. Why? Because it's not about party. It's about Michigan. When I became the Detroit police chief, it was a mess. The city was a mess. We went under emergency management. We were facing bankruptcy. Before I left Cincinnati, when Michigan called me to come home to serve as chief, business owners, conservative business owners in Cincinnati said, please don't go to Detroit. It's a mess. We want you to stay here. Resign as police chief. We want you to be the next mayor of Cincinnati. I said, whoa, my name's not Jerry Springer. We all know Jerry Springer, right? You know, he was the mayor of Cincinnati. I can be a comedian too, although would we call him a comedian? Probably not. Game show host or whatever. But I say all that to say, when people ask me about my career, I served 44 years in law enforcement, didn't have a bad day. But I had some challenging days. But coming back home to Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, as a police chief, when the city was facing bankruptcy, that was a true blessing. See, what you may not know, when I started in this profession at 19 years old, I set a goal. And the goal was, one day, I'm going to be the police chief. I just didn't know where. And as it turned out, I ended up being a chief of 3 cities. And every city prepared me for what I'm doing right now, because every city had different challenges. Portland, Maine, the 3rd largest African immigrant migration. That little small city in the Northeast, the biggest city in Maine, I thought, based on my experience, was poised for civil unrest. You had Somalis and Sudanese. They didn't get along, but what they had in common, they didn't like local government. So I went about the business of sitting in rooms with these 2 groups because it was important for me, the police department, and the city to bring folk together. That's what's missing at our state level. Why would we, I mean, I get the pandemic, none of us are scientists. The governor didn't talk to the lawmakers. She didn't. She unilaterally made decisions, and we know now, not based on science. Shameful. One thing I've learned over my journey, you have to bring people in, sit down, even with people you disagree with. Because why? What's most important is the people. I work for you, not the other way around. I work for you. And as the last speaker indicated, I'm not doing it for money. I'm not doing it for ego. I'm not doing it for glory. I'm doing it because we need better. And I am the one that can beat the incumbent. Oh, they say statistically, oh, an incumbent governor hasn't been overturned in, what, 30 years? Okay, so people told me times have changed. We're in a special place. We have to get behind a candidate that can unseat her and move this state forward, because we're failing. I'm going to talk a little bit about where we're failing. But that said, I left Portland, Maine, went to Cincinnati, and Cincinnati's an interesting place. Racially divided. They never had an outside police chief, not a black police chief. And so I came in, they said, oh man, where's this guy coming from? He's from Hollywood. Whoa. You know, and it is funny. I didn't know what to expect. But I got to tell you, Portland, Maine, Cincinnati, Ohio, wonderful experiences. As I indicated, the business folks there supported me. And then the state called me to take on the challenge of dealing with Detroit's historic high crime. Police officers' morale was at the bottom. The community had lost confidence. You had local activists like Detroit 300, New Era Detroit, who I thought, frankly, were a little militant. They didn't necessarily like me. I didn't like them, but I got into the room with them. Why? Because it wasn't about me as a chief. It wasn't about them, and we built a relationship for the betterment of Detroit. Now, that sounds a little cliche. You say, well, wouldn't it be nice if the CEO of the state could bring people in a room, business owners? You know, if we're going to shut down restaurants, small businesses, would it have been smart to bring these folks in and just have a conversation? Say, here's what we're facing. The science says this. This is what I'm thinking. What say you? And let's work through it together. In doing so, when the bad decision or the tough decision has to be made, people are more willing to accept it. That's called leadership. That's called leading from the front. So let me digress for a minute to give you an example why it's important to meet with folks in very difficult situations. When I was Cincinnati police chief, you may or may not know, Cincinnati also had civil unrest in the early 2000s. It was because 14 African-American men were shot by Cincinnati police. 14 over a 2-year period. From that was a riot. From that, the city or the police department went under federal oversight for about 7 years. So when I came in, federal oversight was over. The wounds were still open, and so I came in. So my welcome to Cincinnati, probably within 6 months of my tenure, a 16-year-old black youth was shot fatally by a white police officer. Now, sadly, everything's all about race today. I was on a radio show the other day and said, well, you know, if a white cop shoots a black man, it's not to stop. Why does it got to be about race? I said, let me tell you something. I've been in this business a long time. I've worked with all ethnicities, black, white, Asian, male, female, gay, and straight. The vast majority of them serve with distinction and honor. Police officers don't wake up in the morning and want to use deadly force. There are exceptions. There are exceptions. And when there are exceptions and an officer crosses the line and commits a criminal act, it was my duty as the chief of police to be transparent and address that in a very timely way. But generally speaking, these men and women put their lives on the line every night. And I said on this radio show just the other day, I'm sick and tired of talking about race. We need to support our police officers. We need to support our police officers. Thank you. 16-year-old black male shot by Cincinnati police officer. He was armed with a weapon, a gun. It was a foot pursuit. It culminated in front of a Fifth Third Bank in downtown Cincinnati. There was a struggle. The police officer was on top of him. The 16-year-old had the gun pointed up at the officer, and the officer had to make a split-second decision because he was clearly faced with an imminent threat to his life. He fired once, fatally, wounding this 16-year-old. So it's a video. And you remember the Rodney King, because I lived through Rodney King. If I had more time, I'd talk about Rodney King in Los Angeles. But in Cincinnati, we're looping this video just like the Rodney King. So people were getting amped up, excited, didn't know what the outcome would be. I did something that I've never done. As a police chief, I met with this 16-year-old's mother. Of course, it's always tragic when we have to take a life. I offered my condolences, and I said, look, I have another video. I know, Mom, you may not want to come to headquarters and see it, but in that meeting with his mother, there were other family and friends in this meeting. They said, Chief, we'll come. We want to see the video. And clearly that video depicted what the video that was rolled and repeated in the news, and it really showed that, yep, the officer's life was in danger, and he properly used the force, deadly force in this instance. Imagine a mother, some of you are mothers here, imagine a police chief coming to your home because one of my officers just fatally wounded your child. Not easy. I only tell that story to say this. If I can do that, you think I can get in rooms with Democrats and Republicans and try to solve some of Michigan's problems? Yes. That's what I'm talking about. Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to fast forward to 2020 because everyone knows this. You saw the images around the country where cities were burning, looting, even some cities here in Michigan. I was shocked when I saw Grand Rapids. I would have never thought Grand Rapids be looting, damaging property, but it happened. Kalamazoo, Lansing, to name a few, but not in Detroit.
Amen.
Not in Detroit. And let me just say, leadership matters. Imagine 100+ days of protests. Most of them were peaceful. We set a tone. Not here, not ever. You attack my police officers, which happened out of the 100+ days, about 7 days. You attack my police officers, there's a certain response. And a certain response is, I'm going to lock you up.
That's right.
And I did, yeah, I'm going to lock you up. But let me just say this. I didn't do it from a basement. Didn't do it from a basement. Well, I was out there in the field. 2 reasons. I wanted these violent outside agitators to see my face. I wanted them to know who I was. And I wanted them to also know when I gave the order to deploy gas, because you're not taking over everything you saw in these other cities, taking over police stations and autonomous zones, they tried it. And they saw me. And I said, hit them with the gas. Hit them again. Oh, and hit them a 3rd time. And they dispersed. I said, look, if you want to protest and you want to be peaceful, I'm with you. But if you want to commit crimes, I got you there too. They tried to set, believe it or not, you know that little crazy thing that went on in Seattle, Washington, where they took over 6 city blocks and made the police officers leave a police station? They tried to do it. You know where that beautiful Little Caesars Arena is? There was talk that they wanted to burn it. They started setting up their little autonomous zone. I said, get the jail bus, give them a warning, 5 minutes, I want them gone. Those who don't leave, go to jail.
Yes.
40 people went to jail, and I'm estimating, maybe more. So, they hated me. That's why when I announced running for governor, the same people that I told to go home, they showed up. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. Those same activists I talked about, Detroit 300, New Era Detroit, activist kind of folks, working through relationships throughout my tenure, I called them too. I said, look, we got some outside folks here in Detroit. They're trying to incite criminal activity. Don't say no more, Chief, we're on our way. We're on our way. That's called building relationships with folks that you may not always agree with. Wouldn't it be nice as governor, we had someone that could sit in rooms with folks we don't always agree with so we can get the work of the people done? This is about you. It's not about me. That's what you get with me as your governor. That's what's going to happen. And so, and as I start to close out, the things I'm most passionate about certainly is, you've heard, leadership's critical. You can't fix roads. You can't do anything if you don't build an effective team, a leadership team. See, smart people will follow leaders because they believe in the leader. It's no surprise to me that people have left that administration. It's no surprise to me. Oh, and by the way, there's an op-ed piece recently that talked about the roads not being fixed. Since she ran on that, this is what the op-ed piece said. The roads are 4% better than they were when she started. That would be an F grade. Would you agree? F grade. But the op-ed piece said something else. One of the reasons for failure was her inability to coalesce, collaborate with lawmakers. So she said, well, I tried to raise the state gas tax to 45 cents so we could fix the roads, and the Republicans said no. Well, you didn't run on that. You didn't run on, I'll fix the roads if the Republicans support me. You said you would fix the roads.
She took out the debt anyway, and she still hasn't fixed the roads.
Well, I just said that. The roads aren't fixed. And so they could have gotten fixed, but more importantly, she should have came back to you and said, look, don't blame it on the Republicans, but raising the gas tax is not the answer. About 3 Mondays ago, I made a proposal. I know I'm not a lawmaker, I'm not the sitting governor, and I thought I would use a little common sense. You know, Michigan is hurting, our nation is hurting, gas is soaring. A little common sense here. How about we suspend the state gas tax, 27 cents per gallon? It's not much, but at least it's a good faith effort to lighten the impact on Michigan families. So a day or so, thank you for that. Thank you. A day later, the senators came out and proposed that bill. The governor vetoed it, and I think you said that. I know you're over there talking right now. But I'm right, so you can stay right here.
Right.
We did it in Detroit, the first automobile plant in 30 years. 3 years ago, they built that beautiful Grand Wagoneer in Detroit. We must do better. We must keep our young talent here, but we got to make sure the folks, these young people, can read, because one thing I saw when the Detroit plant came online, the mayor wanted to focus on hiring Detroiters. The challenge was the ability to pass a test, going back to literacy. All this thing ties in together. If a child can't read by the time they're in the 3rd grade, they can't read to learn. If they don't learn, it's a greater likelihood they're going to do what? Drop out. If they drop out, there's a greater likelihood they're going to do what? Become incarcerated. So this is also a public safety issue. But it's also about the future of our state. This is why I'm so passionate. I'm passionate about a lot of things, but these are the core issues. And then lastly, something near and dear to my heart, public safety. These woke politicians have allowed the radical left to spew hate against the men and women who serve, the anti-police rhetoric, defund the police, dismantle the police. And now all of a sudden, they're trying to back away from it. Even our governor in 2020 came out and said, I support the spirit of defunding the police. She said it, right?
Yep.
And now all of a sudden she wants to throw money at the police. A little too late. It's broken. It's not the police that are broken. The criminal justice system is broken. And it's appalling to me that when we talk about increasing crime, these politician types don't want to talk about the core issue. Can we talk about the woke prosecutors?
Yeah.
Can we talk about the woke judges
Yes.
that are releasing these violent, predatory criminals back into our community? You know why they won't say anything? Because they're politicians. So just stay quiet. Let me say this. If you take on the position in a political office and you remain quiet because it's not feasible, you are complicit. You are supporting judges that engage in this reckless bail reform. You're supporting, like the prosecutor out in Ingham County, who has said, I will no longer charge anyone with felony firearm. And that's a very serious offense. And her reasons for it is there's too many black and brown men in jail. Whoa, wait a minute. So what about the victims in our communities, the real victims? the people that rely on police. So now we make victims out of violent criminals. It's here, folks. Look at what's happening in New York. Look at what's happening in San Francisco and LA. And let me close on this note so you can ask me some questions. I did a leadership talk out in San Diego, California. And we talked about all the stuff that was going on around the country. Do you remember seeing where the looting, the burning, police cars being burned and people running out of stores with items? Here was the common thread. Where were the police? Police were told to stand down. Yep. Let me just say this to you. As the chief of police in Detroit, if my mayor had told me to stand down, let's just let them play. Like in Seattle, somebody said Seattle, Washington, where they took over the police station, and the mayor got up and said, it's a summer of love. That wasn't a summer of love. Here's what I know. If my mayor told me stand down, that was a day one or two things was going to happen. You fire me or I resign. I'm obligated to serve and protect this city, and if you want to get in my way, fire me. And then I'll hold a news conference and talk about it.
Right.
So thank you. Thank you.
All right, we're going to do some Q&A for the chief.
The way we're going to do it is, if anybody has a question for the chief, just come over here. I will hold the microphone. That way I don't have to run all over the place. Just come here and get in line, and we'll do it that way. I find that's the most efficient way, and I'm going to hold the mic. And we're going to keep it short, right, Braden? Right.
Did I hear you say you're an engineer?
I'm sorry?
Did I hear you say you were an engineer?
Oh, I was in engineering school. I'm going to tell you, I'm a dropout.
Oh.
So I dropped out of engineering school and became a cop. But I got my undergraduate in business and my master's in public administration. And then I was working on a PhD when I was a chief in Cincinnati, and I dropped out because I got the job in Detroit.
Very good, very cool. So my question is, I'm an engineer, so that's what I was wondering. That's awesome. You went far and above what I've done.
You're mechanical?
Yeah, mechanical.
Oh, yeah, that's what
So,
I was majoring in.
one of the things that I've noticed in the automotive industry where I work is that it's not just schools that are affected by this woke ideology. I have to sit through lectures where I have to sit through 5-10-minute prepared lectures about why saying you guys is sexist and things like that, and this is what we do with our day. And the reason for this is what's called environmental, social justice, and governance scoring. Are you aware of what ESG scoring is, and what would you do? Well, are you aware of what it is?
I'm not aware, and I'm not aware it was in the automotive industry. I'm also aware that it is in Disney.
Yeah.
Disney is engaged in woke. It's in our military. I'm aware of that. But I didn't know it permeated through the walls of the automobile industry. But what I would do, I would speak out against all of it.
Oh, I am. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to have diversity training, I mean, I get it. But indoctrination, there's no place for it. No place for indoctrination. And so I know I got a lot of questions coming because I think we're on time. Was that primarily what you?
So I'm just wondering, since all of these businesses are colluding together to implement like a credit score for all these businesses among all the major corporations in America with this ESG scoring, would you be willing to go after them for racketeering or discrimination because they're implementing this DEI, SEL, woke agenda?
Well, I would go
amongst
after
each
them.
other?
I would go after them because of the woke agenda. That's why I applaud the Florida governor, what they're doing with Disney. I don't know about you, I'm not going to support Disney, and now I'm trying to question whether or not I want to continue to support Apple, given that they want to have men emojis with men who are pregnant. There's no such thing in life.
Just follow the science.
Yeah, I've never heard, not in my lifetime, unless there's some new science I don't know about.
Next
Yes,
question.
ma'am.
Chief Craig, could you tell me where your people were November 20th when we were at the CTF and being harassed? How come you didn't have your people in there to protect us?
Well, let me just say this. Despite, and I hear this question all the time, my people absolutely were at, what was it?
TCF.
Coble? CTF. right.
TCF.
Now Huntington Place. Yeah. They were there, and what our police officers responded to, there was a disturbance. There was some beating on the window where the ballots were being counted. Police officers went in, that, total compliance, and everybody left. So the police officers were absolutely there. So when I hear these things, look, I'm across the board. A crime is a crime. I'm gonna deal with it equally. I don't care who's, I don't ask it, well, is this a Republican thing or is it a liberal? It doesn't matter to me. Right down the middle. There was a disturbance there, and our officers effectively said, can't do it, and it ended.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you tell me what your position is on the rights of the unborn? And has your position always been consistent on that issue?
Pro-life. Now, we'll tell you, pro-life, pro-life, pro-life. It's that simple. I will tell you, as I was transitioning and having been a lifelong cop, one of the areas I honestly struggled with, I don't struggle with it now because only God makes a decision whether a life should be taken. And that also includes someone who has been charged with murder. And so I don't agree with capital punishment because we have seen, I have seen, sometimes people have been wrongly accused. What if we had put them in the gas chamber? So at any rate, pro-life. But what I did struggle with is fact, women who are subject to criminal attacks, whether it be rape or incest. But again, we have the means to take care of a child if the mother decides she doesn't want to keep it. Thank you.
Chief, I personally want to thank you for keeping Detroit and Wayne County safe.
Thank you.
Unlike what happened in Chicago, unlike what happened in Minnesota, unlike what happened in California. It was amazing that everybody thought Detroit would break down and you stopped it.
Thank you.
So my question is, I see you protecting the idea of personal liberties, personal rights.
Yes.
You rebuilding the image of the police. You attempting to keep sanity where there's been insanity. I want to know, what is your first target to rebuild our state?
Well, the first target is, that's a good one. He said fix the roads. That's Whitmer's thing. I want to fix it.
Actually, that was to fix her road, but.
Right, fix her roads. I want to first fix the administration because what I saw coming into Detroit as chief of police, I knew that if I didn't fix the police department first, I couldn't do what we need to do to keep Detroit safe and rebuild and establish a trust-based relationship and confidence in our department. So right now there's a lack of confidence. We have to build an effective team. We have to put the right people on the team and then very quickly start getting the work done.
Also, one other thing, are you going to investigate the voter fraud?
I have already said with nauseam, this is what I have said. And you need to talk to your lawmakers. I've said the way we address it, because there's a lot of concerns out there. Number one, forensic audit. I have initiated several forensic audits during my time as police chief because the only way you're going to know what happened, you got to find out what happened so that you can put things in place to prevent it from happening again. I don't know what's happened. I'm a cop. When people come to me and say, don't you know the election was stolen? I've not seen a report, but I do believe it. But I will tell you this, In addition to that, I certainly support voter identification, voter identification, voter identification, voter identification does not equate to voter suppression. I'll tell you a short story. I went into the last Detroit election for mayor. I went into the polling location, and keep in mind I talked about my mother, who was a longtime poll worker. Came in, Chief, nice seeing you. Love what you did in Detroit. Hate that you had to go, but we understand you're running for governor. I need to see your ID. True story. And guess what? I showed my ID. Just like I show an ID to get on a plane. That's not suppression. Look, I don't want us to do what they're doing in New York, which is absolutely absurd. It's criminal. It's against our Constitution. I'm going to fight for you. People who are in our country illegally cannot and should not vote.
Chief, you're very well regarded on this side of the state. How do you get your message across to the west side of the state, as well as how do you close the divide between the west side and the east side of Michigan?
Great question. Contrary to what you might read about, oh, the chief is not really campaigning. That's a bunch of crap. I've been on this campaign trail. I go to Grand Rapids more than I spend time in Detroit. I'm going to Grand Rapids again next week. And so it's a bunch of malarkey. And unfortunately, it was said earlier by the gentleman running for U.S. Congress, our party's divided. It is, and it's shameful, and we must do better. So when they say things like, oh, the chief has decided he's going to drop out, if you didn't hear it come out of my mouth, it's not true. I am going to be attacked, and I didn't say it in my remarks, and I'm not a big fan, I don't get excited about polls, but I've been consistently the leader among the GOP in polls by a good margin, a wide margin. With Whitmer, some polls showed me in a dead heat, some showed me behind her, some showed me a little bit ahead of her. I don't get excited about that. But here's what I paid attention to. With independents, 2 polls said this. One poll said I was 17% ahead of Whitmer with independents. Another poll said I was 8% ahead of Whitmer with independents. I see that as opportunity. Thank you. Because we know Michigan is a purple state. And there's some independent folks said, look, I ain't Republican, I'm not Democrat, I just want the right person. I'm going to work hard to get them too.
All right, first, you're from Cass Tech, so you got my vote.
Oh, I love it.
Second, you were one of my speakers when I was chair of the county party 7 years ago, and very well respected from our group back then.
Oh, wow.
And the North Oakland Republican Club is open to everybody, as Matt here says, and we're very proud of that. However, I want to touch on the subject that you mentioned, and that is the Republican Party is divided. I'm going to give you 2 examples and tell you that you can't lead if you don't get elected. And in order to get elected, you do need to bring the party together.
Yes.
In a recent county convention, there was extreme exclusionary behavior on certain parts of the party.
Yes.
Where once they had the majority, they excluded everybody else. In my caucus in Waterford, that was clearly evident. And I was Delegate 59 as a former chair of the party. Recently, 2 days ago, the golden boy of the Tea Party people, Matt Maddock, was kicked out of the Republican caucus. Now, I was extremely upset with the exclusionary behavior at the county convention, and as strange as this may seem to a lot of people in this room, I'm extremely upset that they excluded Maddock. I don't agree with the man. I don't like the man. But he was elected to serve the people.
Yes.
And that has been taken away from him. So how do you bridge the divide against what we call the button sheeple people, who are groups of people that do what they're told, go where they're told, vote how they're told, and exclude everybody that's not in their group, and the Republicans who kick somebody out whose wife is the vice chair of the party? This is ridiculous.
I agree.
We need leadership in the party that brings people together. How can you do that?
I just explained it in my probably 45-minute talk.
Yeah. I didn't hear it.
Well, you didn't hear it.
No.
Was you out of the room?
Yeah, I was there.
Let me just say this, in the interest of time and candor. Leaders know how to bring people together. I've said time and again, I weaved it through my comments throughout my remarks about getting in rooms with people that you don't always agree with. It's okay to be in disagreement. I talked about that mother I met with. Do you think that was easy? Do you think talking to a mother of a 16-year-old who was killed by a police officer was easy?
No, it wasn't.
Do you think it was easy that I spoke to people that had distrust of the police department? Absolutely not easy. But I did it because it was bigger than me. You're absolutely right. That should not have happened. It's shameful. Now, when I am the candidate who goes forward to go against Whitmer, I'm the de facto head of the Republican Party. And as the head of the party, I'm going to work very hard to bring this party together.
If you get that, you call me and I'll help you.
Chief Craig, Commander Summerad here, and I want to thank you for all your work in helping us make Detroit a very safe environment when we brought the USS Detroit into town.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes, and
that was wonderful.
Had a chance to go up there in your office and work with you, and I wanted to say, if I had to go to battle, I would want to go along with you.
Oh, wow.
So, thank you very much. I do have a question.
Sure.
But a couple weeks ago, I was asking my 5.5-year-old grandson a question, and he said his teacher asked him, or basically told him, if he's a boy, it's okay to be a girl. And he was they were telling the girls, if you're a girl, it's okay to be a boy. And this is a 5.5-year-old.
And now, where is this at? This is here in Michigan.
Yeah, it's up at, around Ortonville. But that's the climate that we have going on, and I wanted everybody here to hear that. This is a true story. And I was just in Florida, and I heard the same story there. So it's a very similar story there. But my question for you is, you've got our attention. What can I do to help you win and bring this state together?
And I appreciate it, and I want you to stand with me, because one thing I have learned along this journey, you have to stand for what's right. And sometimes standing for what's right means you're going to take some hits. I'm unapologetic, and what you just shared with me is what I was talking about in Florida. That's not acceptable. We need to stand together in unison and shut these radicals down. What you have in me is a fighter. I will fight, and I'm going to say this as we get ready. We got one more because we're getting short on time.
Yeah, I'll be 2 more.
So, short story. Before I retired as chief of police, several years ago, a female sergeant was killed by her estranged child's father. He was subsequently arrested. When arrested, he was charged with second-degree murder, placed in custody. After 2 years in custody, a woke judge made a poor decision to release him. My police officers were angry. I was angry. I called a news conference, and I called him a coward. Unafraid, unapologetic. Now, of course, that didn't settle well with him or the chief judge. They wrote me a very nice letter. I'll leave it there. But my point is this: I will not stand back and ignore what needs to be done for the right reasons, ever.
Well, Chief Craig, before I say anything, I want to go along with my good friend Jim Teenall here about Matt Maddock. I don't like the guy either, but he was a duly elected official by his constituents. And if everybody here would contact the Speaker of the House to reinstate Matt Maddock. Like I said, I don't agree with him. I don't agree with a lot of his tactics, but we shouldn't be excluding people that are duly elected. Now, Chief Craig.
I agree.
Now, Chief Craig, for you. The state Senate, this has been a football that's been going on for, God, at least 20 years. It's the Michigan state income tax. The state Senate just passed a bill that I know is going to be vetoed by Whitmore to lower the tax from
3.9.
to 3.9.
Right.
I know you love Florida. I would love for us to first take the first step to get it down to 3.9, but you have stated in
I'm
your...
going to take it lower.
I would love it if you would eliminate it.
I'm going to take it lower. You know what? I said this, I'm meeting with, there's a lot of economists out there who are very brilliant. I'm meeting with this gentleman who is brilliant. I said, look, I want to replicate Florida. I said, what is Florida doing that we could possibly do? Because I'm a big believer. If somebody's got the magic bullet, can we replicate? So one of the things I found out about Florida certainly puts a sales tax because they have, tourism is one of their big industries. Well, guess what? In Michigan, tourism is a big industry. No, we're not hot all year, but the three economic drivers of our state, manufacturing, tourism, agriculture. So thinking about tourism, why can't we exploit it, market our state like it has been done in the past, and find a way to tax that? Now, what they do in Florida, I found out, hospitality, they put taxes, and that's how they were able to zero it out. So what I think, and because I'm not a politician, because I see the world very different, I don't believe in doing things, well, we've always done it this way, so don't think about it. I'm very aggressive, very out the box. I did it in the police department. People would come to me and say, Chief, you can't do that. We've always done it this way. I said, it's broken, so we're going to blow it up. We're going to blow the state up. We can do it. Now, I don't know if we'll get to zero right away, but we're going to find a way. And I'm going to look at the states that are doing it right. Because if we can do that, we can become a top 10 state. And I believe we can do it. One more question. One more. I got to go.
Hello, Chief. So my question is, you talked about woke prosecutors and how they're releasing criminals. You protected Detroit with your actions. Is there any policies you would add or maybe even remove to protect individuals, the right to concealed carry and Second Amendment in general thoughts?
Oh, let me just say this about the Second Amendment. I will be the only governor in the state of Michigan that carries a pistol. Right here. And oh, by the way, I support constitutional carry. And you know what? We're going to follow, as your governor, I'm going to make sure we get constitutional carry, and I'm going to close on this note. You might remember, I was probably the only major city chief in America who came out and said this: law-abiding citizens who carry have an impact on reducing violent crime. It earned me, you like that, don't you? Yeah. I love it too. I love it. Because I'm a practitioner for 44 years. It was an honor for former President Obama to attack me and say, my words, not his. It was kind of foolish for a police chief to come out and make those type of reckless statements. Have you ever noticed that on the left, whenever there's a violent crime or a mass shooting, what do they always talk about?
The gun did it.
The gun did it.
The gun did it, yeah, right.
Well, wait a minute. How about we control criminals? Let's do that. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your patience.
Chief James Craig, thank you so much for coming.
Appreciate it.